Welcome back. So this is the staff of DragonCon Tabletop on YouTube. We were glad to see everybody. This is us after the convention, after a few weeks after the convention, and we're going to talk about this past year and the impressions that we had. So first off, the really big news that happened for us this year is that we got Kobold Press as a corporate sponsor for the track. That was huge. First time we've ever had that. So, in a lot of our panels, which we hope to get some of them up on YouTube, you'll see the big, huge Cobalt Press banner behind us and in front of the table. So that was really cool. Um, you guys have gotten to know the Cobalt Press folks. What do you think of them?
To be honest, I only really have talked to Alexander the most. I know Dot's with them, but I've only had Dot on one panel, and then she had to rush off. So I was like, okay, bye. But yeah, I mean, I really like Alexander. I've loved every time he's come to the con. Um, and yeah, I think it's really cool that we had them as a sponsor. Like, that's just really neat.
Sarah, did you get to interact with Alexander much?
I have a funny story about having met Alexander, which is that I was line managing, I think my second year, so last year, and he tried to go in the room, and I did not realize he was a panelist, and I was incredibly stressed, and I yelled at him, and I said, "Sir, you can't go in there," and he was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be," and I was like, he's like wearing a Kobold Press t-shirt, and I was like, course you are. Yeah, sorry. And I think he told Abby that I was the scary volunteer.
No, that wasn't.
That
you
is
were
too
worried
funny.
that you thought that because the next time you saw him was after that panel, and I was in my Morrigan cosplay, and he and I were talking, and he was getting a photo of my costume, and I was also supposed to be line managing, and so you, as room lead, was just like, Abby, get on the line.
Yeah. So those are my first two interactions with Alexander, but we've had much pleasanter interactions going forward. And no, I think he's great. And I'm so stoked that like Kobold Press sponsored us. I love Kobold Press. I use Kobold Press all the time. So very exciting to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. For those people who aren't aware of who they are, they just had a $1 million Kickstarter. They are during the whole OGL explosion,
which we have a video on if you want to catch up on what that news was.
That's right. There was the Orc license that Paizo released, but there was also the Black Flag license that Cobalt Press released. So they're coming out with their own version of D&D, basically, called Tales of the Valiant. So, and it's really cool because it's like 5.5 is how I would describe it. It's if you like 5th edition, it's the next iteration of, and it's pretty cool. But no, T. Alexander Stangram is a extremely nice guy. He's down to earth. Haven't been to Gen Con and Origins and that sort of thing. A lot of creators can be a little bit standoffish, which is fine. They're just trying to keep a professional distance. But it was really nice to meet somebody who is extremely open, inviting, very sociable. Yeah, just can't say enough. So they were wonderful. And they were also very understanding because this is the first year that we ever did it. So they were very understanding and very supportive.
I did see Alexander at PAX Unplugged last year, and I think also at Gen Con. And he was a little more like standoffish professional because he'd only met me like once or twice before that. And so I think he's kind of like, I think I know who you are, but I'm not 100% sure. Right. But he was much more like warm and open to me at DragonCon this year, I think, because I was in the place he remembered me being. And he was like, yes,
yeah, that makes sense.
You know who this person is. And he was showing me pictures of his wedding and, you know, their dog ring bearer. It was so cute. So.
Yeah, super cute. Oh, that's so cool that you got to see his wedding pictures too.
They're so adorable. He was just like, let me show you these. And I was like, yes, I'd love to see them, please.
Speaking of which, were there other guests that you guys were jazzed about this year that you were particularly glad to see?
I loved Emily Zarka. I'm obsessed with her. Like, I just followed her on everything. I like stalked her website after. I was like, you're my hero now.
Every panel she had where she was like, you know, oh, I'm Dr. Emily Zarka. I was like, yes, you are, doctor.
She's my hero.
So, Sarah, had you ever encountered her before?
I have not. I thought that she she would be such a good fit for like my favorite podcast, Ologies by Allie Ward. And I sent a little email to Allie Ward saying, hey, you should have her on. So fingers crossed that that'll happen for my own selfish listening purposes. But no, I'm wild about her. I think she's great.
That's awesome. I love it. I did when you said all that, I didn't know that was the first time that you had encountered her. I've been following her for years. She's on the PBS stream Storied, and she does this segment on there called Monstrum for those people who don't know. MONSTRUM. But the thing about Monstrum is that those videos are so slick and so professional, and it's put together so well. So many things on YouTube are like some guy in his backyard, which is fine, it's totally fun. But the Monstrum videos are very, very slick, and of course she's a doctorate of English literature for one, and then a folklorist. So all of her stuff is like really well researched. If you get a chance, you should see her stuff on werewolves and zombies, especially zombies. She like goes and interviews like real life voodoons and real life people who African spiritualists, and asks them about zombies and things like that. I mean, so it's really well researched. So what else did you find her on, by the way, Sarah?
Oh, me? Oh, I was just on like just deep diving onto her website, like on her Instagram. I'm not on X anymore, but I know she has a presence there.
To quote another guest of ours, Omega Jones, it's okay, you can dead name Twitter.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I really just am on the introduction to my Emily's Arca journey has begun. So.
That I love it so much. I really do, because I've been a huge fan of hers. And what was cool too was that at a lot of the panels, a number of her fans turned out. So that was really cool too.
That's so
yeah,
cool.
her panels were not lightly attended, which was great.
Oh my gosh. And I sat in on, I think 2 of her panels, and they were so cool. Really informative, really well done. She speaks so well to a crowd, like just amazing, honestly.
Yeah. Like I said on the Dragons panel with her and Ken, I was just like, wow, I can feel my IQ rising just by sitting at this table listening to them. They're both so smart.
And who Abby's referring to, of course, is Kenneth Haidt, who is one of the more intelligent people you'll ever meet in your entire lifetime. His well of knowledge is very, very deep about just about everything, but in particular history, and particularly about weird history.
Yeah.
He knows his stuff.
Which is why he's done stuff like Cthulhu and Vampire the Masquerade.
Yep. But he's got a long history of writing all kinds of stuff in the game industry. Just for example, I was doing a campaign set in like Tibet, and I was like, what is weird and strange in Tibet that I can do? And he's like, oh, you know what? Look up the Nazi occupation of Tibet. Just look that up. And I was like, so the fact that he could just pull that out of the air, like, oh, weird and strange in this part of the world, I can get that for you. You were mentioning Omega Jones, Abby. I was extremely jazzed to get Omega Jones into the lineup this year. Critical Bard, somebody who is like a professional player, which you don't often see. Usually you see professional GMs, but professional players are more rare.
Yeah, professional player, professional streamer, amazing cosplayer. They went to the Critical Role meetup as Loquacious Sealy from EXU Calamity, and just phenomenal work on the body paint, on the pieces they'd put together. Just wonderful. Probably like almost more famously has done music for Critical Role. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
They did the music for I think it was Critter Hug, which was their like little fireside type chat to talk about new games, smaller games, and put spotlights on stuff that wasn't necessarily what they were doing or what Wizards was doing.
Abby, we heard from Sarah. How about you? Were there any guests that you were particularly jazzed about?
I was incredibly proud about getting Omega Jones and Obsidian Brews. Like there were a bunch of guests I really kind of like I guess not like adopted, but I really felt strongly about them being there. And then to see the fruition of them actually being there was very, very exciting to me. I loved having Bendy and Anita on the diversity panel with you and Aloy. I saw Aloy said that was one of his favorite panels, and I was like, yes. I felt very proud. So yeah, and I think that and I love Rob's like map making. Because Rob has such good maps, and I loved listening to him kind of deep dive on them. That was big fan.
And
Very
Bendy,
so yeah.
too. Just like as a person.
What'd you say, Sarah?
I was saying Bendy was just so cool, like as a person to talk to. I didn't get like a ton of chances to talk to them, but when I did, I was just like, you're just really chill, cool. Like I just felt like we were friends already, and we talked like twice. It was really nice.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, Obsidian Brews is an organization of Black game masters, players, creators that are trying to make waves in the gaming space, and they already have. They threw a BIPOC or bi person of color party at Gen Con, and they've appeared on panels at Gen Con as well. So hopefully we'll see more of them. No, all of them were very cool, very chill, just like you said. Loved it. I'd gotten to know Bendy a little bit, but it was really good to meet Rob and get to know him a little bit on the panel, like you were saying. All the maps he made, and he had great energy. Also on the panel lineup, it was good to see Dungeons and Randomness come back because they weren't there last year because COVID hit them hard. And also, this is kind of a tidbit for some of our listeners who are interested in this sort of thing. They tried to change game systems on their podcast. They do. Dungeons and Randomness does a live gaming podcast, and they tried to change game systems, and they actually got messed over. So that's one of the trials and tribulations you have as a content creator, right? Is that sometimes people jerk the rug out from underneath you, which is what happened to them, and it was too bad. But they've since gone back to D&D 5e and have been doing a lot better ever since.
Yeah, and speaking of returning guests, Aloy Lasanta, because he hasn't been there in 3 years now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so having him back was just wonderful.
Yeah, Aloy's a great friend of mine. We've gotten along very well. We met doing design work way back in the early 2000s, and then we've just kept in touch ever since, and have always been, texting, messaging. He's a huge Prince fan, and so we actually bonded over that because I knew something about Prince, and so we. But Aloy, one thing that people need to know about him is that he is, first of all, the first person of color to ever win an Emmy. So that's a massive accomplishment. Huge. And then has won multiple Emmys after. And then also he is a living embodiment. I was telling him this earlier, just yesterday. He's a living embodiment of you can do anything you put your mind to, because he decided he wanted to work in the gaming industry. He did. And then he wanted to do it for a living and pay his half of the bills with it, and he did. Then he decided he wanted to be a songwriter and a musician, and he did, and produce songs, and they were out there and getting traction. And then he decided, I want to write for video games, and so he did. It's just, I told him these are three major industries that are very difficult to break into, and he did it just by sheer force of will. So he's pretty amazing. Any particular panels that you guys were really that you particularly enjoyed, or that you were looking forward to?
I've already mentioned the Dragons panel with Emily Zarka, Dr. Emily Zarka, and Ken Hite. A great panel. I also
what in particular about the Dragons panel was really good for you?
There was so much about it that I had never really thought of in the historical, mythological evolution of dragons and why certain dragons are the way they are. So they mentioned how Asian dragons, and specifically Chinese dragons, are seen as more benevolent because you can't, they are a symbol of the emperor, and you can't just have your emperor going around lighting towns on fire. So you have to have this benevolent mythical spirit that helps propagandize your leader and keep them in power. And then you have variations of the dragon in the Christian West, which are basically plays on the serpent from Genesis. And that's why we see St. George and the dragon in Welsh and English mythology, and a very fascinating historical side of it. And again, just being at a table with people that were just so intelligent and have done so much research into this, and you think, oh wow, I would not know the answer to that. I would not even know where to begin. And they're just like, oh yeah, let me just pull that out of my brain files.
Very cool. Sarah, how about you? Any particular panels that you like just totally loved or were looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned monsters. I honestly, I think I was working that one, but I sat in as room lead. And when I was scrolling through the DragonCon app before, kind of like getting my schedule all figured out, I really wanted to go to a bunch of there were so many monsters and Appalachian monsters throughout the entire con. And so getting to actually sit in on one of those panels was really exciting. And Dr. Emily Zarka talked about how pretty much every monster that is femme coded, you can directly tie to Christianity, trying to basically put women down. And I was going through my Rolodex of monsters, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's so true. And it was, I mean, just really again, Dr. Emily Zarka stan right here.
You were talking about Dr. Emily Zarka and how a lot of the monsters, the female monsters, have this sort of nasty reputation due to Christian influences in Western Europe. One of the more fascinating things is one of her favorite monsters, the Mononotagal, which is a witch-like monster that has bat wings and flies around. It's just the torso of a woman with entrails hanging out, and how it started as a benevolent spirit, but then when the Spanish conquered the Philippines, it became this witchy, cannibalistic creature, and so that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a really fascinating panel, and I also, of course, loved Master Game Master. Always an excellent panel game show setup, and this year went so smoothly. Also, as our second year, we really hit our stride, I feel.
Yeah, the early metrics. This is not set in stone by any means, but the early metrics say that Master Game Master might have been our biggest panel.
I believe that.
Oh, you believe that?
I believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, because Master Game Master was amazing this year. I can't stop raving about it. Basically, if you think about it, I mean, first of all, that was really cool that how you and Devin Chulik were able to narrow down.
Oh my gosh, I am so grateful to Devin in that moment, because the panel right before, I realized I was so not prepped, and I was like, I've got to get prepped. And so I was furiously drawing little squares to check box the questions that we had for them to kind of narrow down from, I think it was 30 to 9, and about 20 showed up.
Yes.
And Devin was just oh, do you need any help with anything? And I was just like, no, I think I got it. And about 5 seconds later, I was like, actually, I'm going to definitely need some help. And I was so grateful, because there were so many times I was having to go through and find their Google form. And so I maybe wasn't paying the most attention. And so I had to be like, hey, Devin, what'd they say?
What is amazing too is Devin Chulik is sitting there right there beside you, the CEO of Start Playing Games, the largest platform for playing games in the world, and there he is just interviewing people, and because when you're nerd famous, a lot of people don't know who you are, and it's just people just riffing in front of Devin Chulik. But it was really cool how you got it down to 9 out of the 20 that showed up, and then I just thought it was amazing that those 9 were so good.
I know.
The first task that we had them do, I listened to all 9 people, and I'm like, oh my God, all of these people are amazing.
Was that the villain monologue? Was that the first one?
Yeah, the villain
Oh my
monologue.
God, every single one knocked it out of the park. I was blown away.
Yeah.
And then there was that one contestant, Kate, who had never GM before.
Right. Like she just had such good ideas. And I was like, it doesn't even matter that you've never done this. Like you are coming out with really good ideas. You should do this.
Yeah.
So that was just like a, I don't know, fireworks at the end of the party or icing in the cake or whatever. That was just an amazing job. She didn't make it past the first round, but
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she made it to that top nine. And I thought it was very generous for Start Playing Games in Devon. She liked to have prize support for those 9 contestants as well. That was amazing too.
And yeah, like the other thing too about this year's Master Game Master is just how supportive all of our top 9 were of each other.
Yeah.
And the way that like they were lining up to go out and present their ideas, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And they're all like, it's okay, you've got this. And they were just all talking each other up. And it was so heartwarming to watch them in that back room.
In the very beginning, yeah, they were holding hands. I mean, they were holding hands like because they were so nervous. It's so nerve-wracking. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just rewatching the clip that I recorded of announcing the winner, and when we had like, I think they announced second place, and then that told us who our winner was, and just like Ashley like running to go hug. It was Bridget, yeah.
Bridget, yeah.
I just, oh my God. So, and they're all like voguing around like the award. It was really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
That was really sweet. And our winner this year, Bridget, wow, just totally, for me, on a personal note, just totally amazing because she was a little bit quieter of a person, but just could turn it on. Just had this internal switcher where you turn it on and all of a sudden she would become this other person. Or describe things in the most beautiful and eloquent manner. I just can't say enough about the winner of Master Game Master. And for those who've gotten this far and still don't know what we're talking about, Master Game Master is like Master Chef, except we put you through a bunch of Game Master tasks to see who is the best Game Master that year at DragonCon.
And honestly, if you don't know what it is, you should come to DragonCon and go to the panel.
That's true.
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe apply.
Another thing that was really great about Master Game Master, for me, having been able to like listen in on the main panel and then also do the prelims, was getting to hear their villain monologue and their tavern keeper. And because I don't think of myself as like the greatest role player, and I would love to get better at that. And so it was very like educational almost to listen to this one and then this one, these two very different types of monologues, these types of RP. I was just like, okay, like taking notes.
Actually, that's kind of a cool behind the scenes moment there. I didn't get to hear their best tavern keeper. Tell me about that. Tell me about the people's tavern keepers as when they presented them and that sort of thing.
So basically with it, we were kind of trying to get like, okay, how, like if they're using a voice, is it a good one or is it a caricature? Because if someone used a caricature voice, we were kind of like, let's maybe steer away from that. Because we don't want anyone to be like offensive.
Okay.
And and they weren't required to use a voice. There was one person, in fact, who said, okay, like, let me preface, I'm not a voice actor. And I was like, that's just like a little bonus point. If you have a really good one, that's all that would be. But we really wanted to see people like embody a character. And I think it was Kate in particular had like a witch's brew type tavern. And so she was like talking about like the different cauldrons and the drinks that were in those cauldrons. And she had this kind of granny voice and it was just very cute. And she was talking to other NPCs, which was really cool. So it really brought that tavern to life. And I was like, oh, can I actually get something here?
Wow.
And that was the number one thing
really
with
cool.
all 9 that passed on, was almost all of them would either talk about the drinks that were in the tavern, things that they had available, or would talk to another NPC.
That is just amazing advice right there. Just what you said. That I'm taking that with me. That's awesome.
That was probably the coolest one. We also had describing settings, and that was one where it was like, okay, how many of my senses are you engaging? And Bridget, even, like, she only really used sight, but the way she described what I was seeing was just so in depth. And I was like, I don't even care that you didn't talk about my ears or, you know, my sense of smell. I'm like so down with what you just said I saw.
That is really neat. Cool. So a little behind the scenes there as to what happened and how we got everybody down from 20 to 9. We had everybody runs through some tasks, and we took the top 9 from there. Were there any other tracks, other fan tracks that you went to that you got something out of?
I had very little time to actually get to other hotels and go to different tracks. I managed to go to one cosplay track panel, and that particular panel did not land for me, but like, that's okay. Not all of them are going to land. I was really bummed that I missed the, was it Zelda Academy, Science and Tears of the Kingdom, and the Road to Hades Town post-apocalyptic panels. Like those, and they were at the same time, and I was moderating a panel at that time. So I couldn't have gone to both anyway, but.
Yep. The pain of being a volunteer at DragonCon. Yep.
Yeah.
I feel you.
It's so hard.
Sarah, were you able to get to see something else?
I went to mostly events instead of panels this year. I did I did more panels last year, but this year I was able to make it to the Elijah Wood, Sean Astin talk with Brian. Thank you, Abby, for covering my shift for that, so I could run as fast as my little legs would carry me to the
You're welcome. Your little hobbit legs.
Yeah, and then I got roped into volunteering there a little bit, which was totally worth it. It was.
I heard amazing things about that one.
It was. I cried. I literally cried. In a good way. Which is my gauge for something that was good. But no, it was.
You cried. What made you cry? What was the moment?
So Jimmy Buffett had just died like a day or two before.
2 days before, I think.
And Sean Astin sang "Come Monday," which is Jimmy Buffett's song about Labor Day weekend. And I just like was weeping in my chair.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I mean, really, like it really got me. And they were talking about the South, which was cool because, you know, being from the South, like it's always exciting to hear people that you really like and admire, like talk about your home and like the cool things about it. Like Elijah Wood waxed poetic about chicken and waffles for like 10 minutes.
I get it.
It was awesome. It was really great. But we went to a couple different more event style things as well.
Rush, I want to ask you a question real quick about the panels, because I know that we did a little swap on Dread for Honey Heist. So I want to know what you thought. First of all, what was your favorite panel, and also what you thought of Honey Heist?
Master Game Master is definitely near and dear to my heart because I have been fortunate enough to be able to win awards at DragonCon for Game Master. And right now they don't hand them out on a regular basis. So I'm like, we should do this because it actually could matter on your resume.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to become a professional game master or whatever, or maybe you just want to go to your hobby store and pick up a group, that might matter. Like, hey, I won this award. Come play a game with me.
I have the plaque.
Exactly. I have the plaque. So that's near and dear to my heart. And of course, very quickly, the last panel that we ever do for the con always is worst gaming story ever. And that panel was put together last minute years ago because my direct supervisor said, we want to do something on Monday. What can you do on Monday? And I'm like, why don't we do like a roundup type thing? And it ended up being like wildly successful and hilarious, just absolutely hilarious. And it is a great panel to close out the entire con with. Like you go to that
perfect closer.
Yeah. You hear all these hilarious stories about people who have had terrible gaming experiences, and then that's it. That's the end. So that's always near and dear to my heart. But I also got invited to sit in on the X track. So that the X track is one about cryptids, aliens, strange, weird things. And I got to sit in there and talk about how D&D influenced Stranger Things. So that was kind of fun. And I got to sit there with the illustrious Kenneth Haidt, who is knowledgeable about all things. And so I could actually hang with Kenneth when talking about that subject. So I felt very fortunate.
I would love to visit more panels in like horror and the extract. It's like my goal for next year is get to more horror.
Okay, yeah,
more of the Weston panels.
Yeah, also because they're like upstairs from us, so I feel like it's just like pop up and say.
Yeah, horror is just like right upstairs above us. Yeah. So yeah, that absolutely. What was the other part of your question, Abby?
Was since you basically had to give up Dread, your baby.
Oh yeah,
for Honey Heist.
For Honey Heist, thank you. So Honey Heist I thought was very interesting because if you want to see get the whole experience, you have to watch the first part on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can watch the second part. Right. And the second part, of course, was live. But I think you can go into that second part and still hang. I mean, it's not like you're lost or what is going on. You immediately got it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was hysterical. It was great. What was also great too was Honey Heist is based after a one-page RPG. So you guys were great. You had the QR code, so you could look up the rules really quick, and it's one page, so it fits in your phone very nicely.
Exactly.
So there's no confusion on that part. But also, it was an amazing assembly of talent. You had Bendy Mitchell, who is part of Obsidian Brews. You had Omega Jones, who is that is his vocation, really. T. Alexander Stangern. So that's what I loved about the Cobalt Press folks is that here he is. He's the CEO of this major game company, but he doesn't mind sitting at a table and rolling some dice for a one-page RPG,
and playing a silly little mouse.
Yeah, and playing a silly little mouse, and he killed it too. I mean, he absolutely killed it. And it was nice to have Josh Simons there directing the whole thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I laughed my ass off. There were a couple times in which I definitely had tears of laughter. A couple times. So you guys did a great job, and Abby, of course, you were always amazing as you always are.
I am very glad that you were crying tears of laughter and not tears of I wish it was Dread.
No. Definitely not. Although I have ideas for Dread possibly next year. We'll talk about that.
Sounds
later.
good. Sounds good.
I do love Dread. It's so good.
It's so fun.
So I think that wraps it up for our kind of decompression of DragonCon this year and our roundup. Did you guys have any other closing thoughts?
I mean, I could probably talk about it for like another 2 hours if we really want to, but
right. But overall, it was also really great to see old friends. For example, before Master Game Master, I had a great time playing just a regular role-playing game with some old friends of mine that I've known for over 20 years. Actually, now probably over 30 years. And it was just nice to bond over that moment. Once again, doing the thing that we love. So it's always good to DragonCon to meet old friends and make new ones and all that sort of stuff. So.
And I think to that point, this was a really great DragonCon because there was a really good balance of old and new faces.
Right. I you know what? I didn't really even realize that until you crystallized it there for me. But I agree very much. It was very much a blend of new and old faces. Yes.
Because we had Jason and Bree and Ken and Eloy, despite the break, who are all like classic faces of the track. But then we had Bendy, Josh, Omega, Anita, Rob, Matt, like all the rest of Obsidian Brews, Dr. Emily Zarka. We had a bunch of new people to really add a freshness to the track, which I think has been needed in some ways.
And you know what? I can't believe that this slipped our minds when we were talking about guests, but one of the newer faces, but not brand new, is Amanda Hammond. Senior designer of Dungeons and Dragons, and the thing she's working on is going to be their big product line for next year. Her name is going to be on the front, and she's developing a mega adventure involving the Hand and Eye of Vecna. So
Ooh.
yeah,
I didn't get a chance to talk to her at all this year. Every time I saw her was like her coming into a panel and me leaving to go do something else, or vice versa. Like we were like ships in the night the whole con.
We talked to her in an elevator at one point.
Yeah, that was like
that was the most we got to talk to her this year. Was we got stuck in an elevator.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's DragonCon. Sometimes is where you like, we didn't see that much of Jason and Bree because ships in the night, like you said.
Yep.
But luckily, I got to kind of sit down with her and talk with her about a few things. But yeah, just she's another one of those designers that is just really amazing in that she will just sit down and like have a drink with you, that kind of thing. Yeah. Where she's just so approachable, so friendly, so earnest. Oh, and she and Alexander are like officially the cutest couple, because I'm glad that I remember this. Here's a fun story.
And I saw the pictures.
Especially great. It's great for the end of this. This is a really fun story. So Alexander is the creative head of Cobalt Press, and Amanda Hammond is like a senior designer at Dungeons and Dragons. So there are two competing companies that they work for, and a lot of people are like, well, how does that work? Well, they just don't bring their work home with them. It's the ultimate work-life balance. But they do co-GM things. And they told me about how they co-GM'd a number of games, one at GaryCon, and they ran the co-GM game. It's like a long 8-hour game too, for Vince Vaughn and a number of his buddies. Yeah, one of the head writers for Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. So they were running this game for GaryCon, and they ran one table of it 8 hours, and then another table of it 8 hours. And he's like, the entire time they're running it, he's like this tall guy with a mop of black hair kept wanting the room. He was like, is there any room in the game? He's like, no, I'm so sorry. Is there any room for the game? No, I'm so sorry. And he's like, and we're only running it 2 times at this con, so and it was booked ahead in advance. I'm so very, very sorry. And then towards the very end, this big tall guy with a mop of dark hair was like, "Is there any way you could run it just like one more time?" And Alexander was like, "Well, of course, Vince Vaughn. We'll run it for you just one more time."
For you.
Yeah. So he and Amanda Hammond got to do that, and they were also co-GMs at D&D in a Castle, which I thought was interesting. But it's so cute. I just have to say it. It's so cute that they co-GM things together. That they're like a husband and wife team, and they do that kind of thing together. It's cool.
The competing publishing houses, but the co-GM team.
They're like a Disney Hallmark movie.
And they're really cute if you see them together. Like when the way they interact, they're just very, very cute. Very, very awesome. Great couple. Okay. Well, I think that's all the time that we have. I will just leave everyone with this. Dice were rolled. Roles were played, and play was fun. And what else is there in life if not play? We'll see you next time.